All right, let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, gender nonconforming and trans ladies, thank you. And thank yourself for tuning in to the Hoodoisie. We are Chicago's only underground live and live stream news show, and we are excited to keep it radical in the time of Corona with Pandemic Issues. Pandemic Issues is a weekly series that we are bringing to you in collaboration with Southside Weekly that gives you the analysis and stories that big media and big local media will not. I'm your host, Ricardo Gamboa, or Ricardo Gamboa. Pronouns are they, them, or damn, girl, you were wearing a nice robe. Look at this. And I'll let my beautiful co-hosts introduce themselves. Kick it off, Charles.
I'm Charles Preston, Audience Engagement Manager for Injustice Watch, and I am enjoying some Hennessy right now.
Hey.
Hey everyone, this is Jackie Serrato, she, her, hers, editor-in-chief of the Southside Weekly.
That's right. And tonight we are talking about roadblocks to housing and recovery during COVID-19. We have some special guests. We got State Representative Delia Ramirez. We got the Executive Director of COCO, Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, Joanna Malone. And we got the Executive Director of Pilsen Alliance, Moises Moreno. Let's give it up. Let's show them some love. You can give some reacts. You can comment on how attractive they are, because all of our guests are. And let's get into it. So I guess I want to get started with letting our audience know who we got with us tonight. So let's, Joanna, kick it off. You are the Executive Director of COCO. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do there and what COCO does? I like calling it COCO.
Sure.
It's like, but not cocoa butter. Oh, okay.
Right, it's cocoa. Cocoa is smooth, right? Smooth. So COCO has been around since 1965. It's a multi-issue, multi-generational, grassroots, community-based organization. Work on issues of affordable housing, equitable education, youth investment, and senior rights. What we do is direct action organizing. We make sure that our communities get what our communities need.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the stuff that you all have been working on recently?
So the biggest campaigns we're working on right now is a campaign to bring rent control here to Illinois because the rent is just extremely too high. We need to make sure that people stop getting pushed out of our homes just because the rent keeps going up above what we can afford. There's a campaign also for a community benefits agreement, also to stop people from being displaced when the Obama Presidential Center comes to Jackson Park. Fighting to make sure that our young women don't keep going missing or being found murdered, forcing law enforcement to take these issues seriously and make sure our communities stay safe.
And Moy, you are in Pilsen. Pilsen represent, that's my neighborhood too. Can you talk to me a little bit about the work that you do with Pilsen Alliance?
Yeah, absolutely. And first off, the Pilsen Alliance is, just like Joanna said, it's a grassroots community organization committed to fighting for social justice. We are a multiracial, multi-generational organization dating back to 1998 when the UIC campus expanded south of 16th Street. So community members at the time came together because they felt the pressures of gentrification then, even longer before the 90s, even like going back to the 70s. So Pilsen Alliance has that history of people from community that have been part of the struggle, for justice, right? And again, as many great people come and go with the organization, what pretty much stays the same as our mission, our values, our commitment to community, and yeah, I kind of like just got lucky to be the director of Pilsen Alliance, and yeah, I guess we're still in the fight, absolutely, and right now, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to throw down, right? Because we knew that this is going to hit our communities hard, right? Black and brown alike. So we've been doing some really great work. I want to give a great shout out to Pilsen and Defensa. These are amazing people who are doing the hard work every day, to reach out to community members who need help right now in Pilsen, the whole Southwest side, pretty much, right? So I want to give them a shout out. So again, that's what makes Pilsen Alliance, a great organization to be a part of. But at the same time, the threats are still there, right? The threats of displacement, the threats of deportations. And that's why Pilsen Alliance is we're pretty much becoming a community defense organization, right? Because like literally today I had to, I had cops passing by, talking shit. and you know, and we had to like
Wait,
say,
you
hey,
got
this is
cops talking shit? They do that? What?
well, I mean, they have the audacity. Like, I mean, like, don't you know who we are? Don't you know who's Pilsen Alliance? I mean, you're the
Right,
ones
right.
so, I mean, hey, you know, so yeah, I mean, that, you know, that's the threat. That's the threat. And we're stepping up to the fight. And this is done, you know, as a collective. So that's, again, that's what I think makes Pilsen Alliance a badass organization. So I'm very proud to be the director and looking to build new leaders at the same time, right? Because this is a collective space. So yeah, I'm definitely down, man. We're down.
Nice. Speaking of down, Delia, I don't even know how to introduce our next guest here because she is only one of 5 politicians we've ever let on the show. We are very choosy, very choosy. We only get the Charles. Let's give her a welcome, a welcome gesturing right now. Let her know it's it's safe. Delia, yeah. I mean, I don't know how this happened, but I'm interested in how it happened for you because you know we never have reps on the show. You're the Illinois state representative of the 4th district. How did that happen? How did you find yourself kind of running for politics, and what was a little bit of that journey like? I mean, you could tell us the story, but this ain't Lifetime, girl. Like, let's keep it to like 3 minutes.
Somebody told them I really like Lifetime.
Yo.
So I can't go back to the moment that my mom crossed the border, pregnant with me, and the whole story.
No, let's hear. Actually, that's a great.
It's gonna make us believe in you.
There we go. So first, let me tell you that I had no interest in running for office when I was asked 3 years ago to run. As a matter of fact, I probably got asked a couple dozen times before I said yes. And part of the reason why I didn't want to do it is because all the bullshit and hypocrisy that I have seen from people that oftentimes look like me and look like us and end up pimping us. So it took a long time for me to say yes. And also because I'm a girl from Humboldt Park who comes from really humbling beginnings. I'm the daughter, for most part, when people ask me, who am I, and tell you about why you are a state representative, I start with talking about my mom. I'm the daughter of Maria Elvira Ramirez Guerra, unapologetic woman who migrated into this country at the age of 19, and she was pregnant with me and nearly died in the Rio Grande. And for her, she wanted to make sure her daughter was able to wear shoes before she was in the 3rd grade, like my mom. And the first of 4, born and raised in Humboldt Park, my mother and my father busted their butt and still do till this day to be able to cover the basic needs. So for me, I knew that I had been waiting and looking for people that looked like me, that sounded like us, and that would actually represent us and spend more time with the people and less trying to get paid by lobbyists and others or forget where they came from. So it took a long time. I probably would tell you that I step back and think about even running for office and all the things and ways that I doubted myself. Because I think that one of the things that we don't talk about is the insecurities that come when you have to be in front of a stage and a debate. I ran against women who had ran before. I ran against big money. I ran against lawyers, right? And people who said to me, you should wait your turn. And oftentimes people that looked like us who told me, you're young, you should wait. You know, you're already doing good stuff in the community. Let the others. And so it wasn't an easy journey for me to run, but I'm so grateful that I did. And the dozens of people who said, listen, we need you to run and we'll help you raise the first $10,000 to make that happen. So 3 years ago that happened. And on election day, my sister's trying to do my makeup after the long day at the polling locations and seeing all the nasty from the alderman at the time of the 1st Ward, Proco developer Moreno, who thank God is no longer there. And all the community.
Give it up.
Yes. Boo.
And has sold so much of our neighborhood. We're still recovering from. And I cried on it. And she said, why are you crying? I'm like, what if we lost? Like, Christina, we did everything we can, but they went at me hard. When I was 17, started working at a shelter. I was there till I was 30, became the director 21. And half the time I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to help people figure out how to be able to do that in a community like Logan Square that for some of us feels like painfully has been lost by gentrification. And they did everything they could to attack me and hit me hard. And I said, what if we didn't make it? For all the volunteers, I've said, man, how many losses do we take? And so when we won, and we won by a 28% margin, I had to double check the numbers 1,000 times before I said, okay, no, I think we may have won. We won. Because oftentimes we who are authentic, who don't sell out to developers, to realtors, to pharmacists, to bankers, to all of those, seldomly get to a place where we're able to actually win. And then when we get in there, be able to actually bring legislation about that makes a difference. I think the difference for me has been that I have been backed and supported by people who make sure, first my mom with the chancla, which is a flip-flop, tells me, if you forget where you come from, you live next door to us, I will give you a flip-flop the way I did when you were 12 and trying to cut school. But the second part of that is I have a neighborhood who keeps me very rooted, who built a political organization after I got elected to keep me rooted. And it has been a whirlwind. Springfield is not pretty. I cried the first 2 months coming back every time because it felt like a place that wasn't for me. But it was my neighborhood that continues to push me to be there. So I can talk more and more about that, but I'm grateful to be part of it. And people say to me, well, you shouldn't be so direct. Like, people elected me to be direct.
You're like, I'm from Humboldt Park. I don't know how to be any other way.
I still live on the same block that I grew up in. I am super Humboldt Park. Right. And number two, my parents are my core reason why I do what I do. And when I hear my mom talk about that, you know, I didn't pay for the extension of my healthcare insurance because I couldn't afford it when I had to go on unemployment because I'm a home care worker making minimum wage. That stuff isn't stuff I hear about or someone told me about, a constituent may have written to me about. These are things that matter and impact me directly, which is why for me, when we go all in, this is going all in for my family and for my neighbors and the people that expect me to do that or get out. So I'm really grateful to be part of it.
Yeah, you brought up some things like, you know, even just talking about what your mom says to you, it's very different than what my mom says to me, which is shut the fuck up, you're talking too much. And then I'm also thinking about the idea of being insecure in front of people. I am, you know, I'm a very shy person. I understand that. I empathize with that. Shut the hell up. And busting your butt, you know what I mean? You know, I'm not a Guatemalan immigrant. I'm a queer man. So I imagine my butt busting is very different than the kind that you were talking about. But let's get a little bit deeper in this conversation and talking about how we're all busting our butt to survive during a pandemic right now. And so all of you are kind of very intimately tied to housing issues right now. And we've seen the effects since mid-March that we've been struggling, you know, through, and the economic fallout. And in Chicago, when it comes to housing, we were not offered much, right? Lightfoot had landlords sign a non-binding pledge.
Weak as hell.
Right. And then she only offered $1,000 in rent to only 2,000 residents that were selected by lottery, although 83,000 applied. And what's, you know, one of the things I've been kind of gathering in this idea of like being an activist that's always looking for solutions and models for how things could be different is this isn't the case in other places. Right? The Danish government promised to cover 75% to 90% of salaries if businesses don't lay off employees. Netherlands will pay up to 90% of wages for companies. Germany will spend more than $40 billion to help small businesses. Will cover basic needs to stay afloat. South Korea's employee retention program covers 70% of wages. And, you know, I'm saying this because, you know, I'm speaking a lot about employment because, you know, it's even just this seeing how much even the government is willing to do to cover for private interest, right? Mm-hmm. And our government does that in a very different way to make sure that housing, you know, and you know, that people can self-sustain. And that's not what's happening here. And so I'm wondering, and I think we can all agree with that, right? Is that, you know, yep. And so I think one of the things I want to throw out there for Joanna and Moy, first, what are some of the things that you've seen on the ground in your communities, which are also distinct, right? Joanna, we're talking about Kenwood, Oakland. Moy, we're talking about Pilsen, you know, those look very different. Mm-hmm. And I'm just interested in what are some of the things that have been happening and that you've been seeing since the outbreak?
People are struggling. I mean, simply put, you know, the governor at the end of March told people to stay home, told people to shutter their businesses, you know, not caring what it took to establish those businesses, what they might lose by having to close those doors, what the employees are going to have to do to make do. There's been over 1 million people who filed unemployment claims across the state, a lot of whom have not seen anything as a result. And so people are trying to figure out how they're going to cover their rent payments, how they're going to cover their mortgage payments. And there's no means for them to do it, right? You talked about what Lightfoot did. I mean, what about other communities, right, who don't have that, right? That was nothing, right? And so we have examples of elected leadership who are trying to fight for the people, vis-a-vis Delia. Then you got a whole lot of examples of elected officials who don't care, right? They care about the ruling class, the owning class. And that goes back to the founding of this country. You talked about some of these other countries around the world where they're actually trying to be compassionate, if I could use that word, and understanding the trauma that people are experiencing. They don't care about that here. And so, you know, you look at everything. You look at, this is going on a slight tangent, right? But you look at the fact that Lori Lightfoot sacrificed Chicago neighborhoods to protect downtown. Like, she did that. She made a decision and then took the steps to make sure that they were carried out. She did that. Governor Pritzker has had the power since he declared an emergency in the state of Illinois to cancel rent for people so that they wouldn't be struggling, stressed out, trying to figure out how they're going to keep a roof over their families' heads. And he has chosen not to do it and has repeatedly come up with excuses as to why he won't do it without just saying, I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm. How's been things looking on your end, Moy?
Pretty fucking crazy, let me tell you. Definitely, this is impacting the Latino community, the Latinx community, and you know, Black and Brown, pretty much, because our community is pretty much, you know, segregated, but at the same time, it's like it's all together, right? And we've really much relied on, because we can't rely on city and state and all that, so it pretty much came down to volunteers fundraising on their own, right? The mutual aid, and again, that goes back to the volunteer work of like Pilsen Defense, Fem Defense, PA Youth, right? So really, it really came down to just people raising money from community to give back to community, right? So we know that undocumented families are being hit really hard because they're not able to pay rent. In many cases, they haven't paid rent since, like, you know, April or March, you know? So it's, and in many cases, like, landlords don't really know, like, you know, what the hell they're doing, because it's like, you know, and I think this is just a lack of knowledge, right? And what I mean by that is, like, people don't know what's going to happen, right? So it puts a lot of people in limbo, right? So again, people have been reaching out to us. We've been signing people up. We've at least with regarding the mutual aid, I'm hearing that definitely around at least 70 families a week. So that's like close to 300 families a month, and that's been ongoing, and it's going to continue to go. So that's like, you know, food, supplies, and rental assistance. That's something that, again, that we raised money on, and we were able to help 30 families in this first round, Black and Brown families in Pilsen, the 25th Ward. And we know that it's some help, but really it's a bigger problem, right? So we're doing what we can on the ground, and we're really mindful of the fact that when this stay-at-home order is lifted, right, that what's going to happen? Are people going to be displaced? Are people going to get evicted, right? That's what we're really worried about. And I think, and we know that the big monsters, the big developers, the predatory developers, they're lingering in the shadows. They're not going away, right? So, you know, communities of color are definitely going to be, we're seeing that they're going to be targeted, right? And we want to make sure that people know what their rights are. We want to provide political education to families so people know what's going on, right? And how they can get involved. So we're doing a little bit of everything that we're trying to do with really, you know, limited resources, a lot of heart, right, from Pilsen Alliance and the crews that are involved, and we're getting by. We're getting by. So again, it's not to say that we're above this crisis, none at all, but it's, you know, we're tough, man. We're not giving into this shit. So.
There's the Moy. I was like, Moy's being very nice on this conversation, and then I got to hear some of that. We ain't giving into this shit. There we go.
I don't know, because, you know, this is a daily struggle, man. And I, you know, the families come in every day, you know, and obviously we got to do the social distancing and whatnot, but we feel it. We feel it. So that's where we're at right now. That's what's happening on the ground.
So Delia,
yeah.
I want to get you in on this conversation from the political end. I've heard about a recent bill you put forth that was voted on last week. Can you give us the details around that? The inspiration for that type of legislation, and how did it even get authored?
Yeah. So at the beginning, you know, you asked why I ran and how I ran. Honestly, I ran partly because I knew that in Springfield, ain't no one, I mean, I say ain't no one, right? But maybe I will, because I'm from Humble Park, and it is what it is. And you want me to be real. Very few people were doing anything about housing. There is no housing committee, either in the House or the Senate.
In Springfield?
In Springfield.
No housing committee.
We got committees for a lot of things. You know, I joke around, we have committees even for the color green, if you wanted, but there is not a committee on housing. I find it pretty cynical. I'm for real. I find it pretty cynical that we are the House of Representatives with no housing committee. So let it sink in.
Yeah, I mean, JB Pritzker got a housing committee. He a landlord of quite a few properties, I imagine.
He said it, not me, JB. If you're listening, but I do agree. But I say that to you, Charles, because it is really cynical, the fact that we talk about shelter in place, we talk about stay at home, when so many people before this darn pandemic couldn't shelter in place if they wanted to, and we're barely staying at home, right? I mean, we've been in this fight, Joanna and I know I got a little gray hairs now, and my birthday was yesterday, but I'm not that old, but we've been at it for a long, long time. Yeah, no, if you look right here. And I know because my 7-year-old nephew reminded me how old I was last night as they were cutting me a little cake. But we've been at this for a very long time, like ridiculously long time. So I knew that when I was going to Springfield, there were a lot of issues that I'd be working on, but I had to focus on housing. I ran a shelter. I know how hard it is to move people into permanent housing. And oftentimes we don't move them. And who are the people that are experiencing homelessness? They're Black and they're brown, right? So when this pandemic happened, some of us fought our asses off. That when the Speaker of the House and the Senate President said, we're going to create working groups. So during the pandemic, the legislators, since you're not in Springfield, you can work on something.
That's Mike Madigan, correct?
Mike Madigan and Cullerton retired. So now it is Don Harmon from Oak Park, who's now the Senate President. Some of us worked our ass off to have a housing working group. And let me tell you that it sounds like nothing, but the fact that we had a housing working group for me was one of the biggest victories. And I'll tell you why. Every time Joanna talks about rent control, every time we talk about tenant protections in Springfield, they send a lot of these bills to committee. They either stay in rules, which is a committee that bills stay and never see the light of day so that they're not even considered, or they're sent to committees to die. Committees that won't move them. Committees that are connected to the Realtors Association, committees that are connected to a lot of people, but not the people that need the service. So the housing working group to me was a first step to have a place where elected officials on the House side can actually talk about what the hell is happening right now when we're cynically telling everybody to stay home. And the people that are in shelters right now are literally dying because we didn't offer PPE to them, because people were in the street, because we told shelters decompress. When you decompress a shelter, where the hell are you sending the people, right? So on March 18th, after the elections that were brutal, I spent the rest of the time on the phone, first figuring out the shelter situation, and then with a number of organizations like COCO and others saying, what the hell are we going to do to make sure that more people don't become homeless when this moratorium on evictions and foreclosures are lifted? Because the filings don't stop. You can make all the pledges in the darn world. A pledge is just a pledge. It does not feed people. It doesn't keep people housed. And it certainly doesn't mean that we're going to be safe during a pandemic. So
I want to interrupt you for a very serious question. Why does Mike Madigan look like an evil wizard from a Harry Potter movie? And if you don't believe me, y'all, I will prove to it right now. It is right there, y'all. I mean, look, it is. I'm scared. I'm gonna stop that share right now. But I'm just wondering. So let's get back to the real issues at hand.
I'm not even gonna say anything. That was him right there.
You're gonna get her in trouble. He
I gotta go back over there in November. And I'm about to tell you what I'm gonna try to do with the help of Joanna and Moy and others during veto session. So a bunch of us came together, and the conversation about canceling the rent has been real. COCO has been talking about this for a long, long time. And a number of organizations have been saying, if we don't bring relief like yesterday, our people will be in the street. There is no economic recovery during the pandemic if we don't address housing. So we worked with a couple of groups to put together this legislation. I was co-chairing the housing working group, and seniority is a mother in Springfield, let me tell you. And I am
Really?
reminded I'm a freshman all the time. But thankfully, because of the work and the people around, I was able to help a little bit in the housing working group. I was honorary housing working group chair. So we put together this bill that did a couple things. One, it canceled the rent for 180 days. And it canceled the rent, and how it was legal and constitutional, although people kept saying to me it's not constitutional. Our attorneys verified that as long as it was coupled with the relief fund that would make the landlord whole, we could cancel the rent for 180 days for anyone who was experiencing financial hardship as a result of COVID-19. We know who that is, right? They were struggling in February. They're nearly dying now during this pandemic. The second thing that we did is to say we need a moratorium on evictions and foreclosures that goes beyond the executive order for 180 days. And if the governor comes back and there's a second wave of coronavirus, that this could be extended for another year. And then the third piece of that, and then there's mortgage forbearance within the legislation, a number of things around tenant protections. We know that we can pledge a lot of things, and we have some really good landlords. We also have some landlords that will do whatever they can to get rid of you, particularly if you're in Humboldt Park and other areas where the 606 makes it very sexy for you to triple someone's rent. So we also put in a rent freeze for 180 days so that landlords could not double or triple the rent and take advantage of the vulnerable moment that people were in, right. As well as making COVID-19 an extended protection. If you are experiencing hardship through it or you have been sick with COVID-19, that landlords cannot discriminate against you in keeping you housed. So I was told it was a pretty bold bill. There was no way that it would even be considered in a 3-day special session. Because of the work of so many community groups, we were able to get it to Springfield into a committee. There's so much complicated stuff that comes into getting it out of committee, getting it into committee, getting a vehicle to the Senate. And I'm not going to bore you with all of that. I will say to you that I need a lot more of our folks that care about housing, the State House and in the Senate.
So talk about that. Like, it was voted down. We need to know why, and we need to know why the fellow reps, the people you got your back, the other Democrats, didn't help out.
So we got it into executive committee, and I got out of executive committee the first time. We made some amendments to try to bring some kind of a compromise. I told the speaker, there is no way that I can commit to you that I'm going to be able to remove the opposition of the realtors. The realtors are the realtors. I don't take a dollar from the damn realtors for a reason, right? So what I'm willing to do is to demonstrate that we have a spirit of negotiation, but there are non-negotiables. So every time you make an amendment, a revision, you're required to go back into committee. I made it to committee 2 times and I got it out of committee 2 times. The third time it didn't make it through. By the third time, I had picked up 49 votes, 49 co-sponsors. In order for anything to move out of the House, it needs 60 votes. So I was with a couple of colleagues of mine, Rep. Gazzardi, Rep. Cassidy, Representative Ma, Representative LaPointe, Representative Lisa Hernandez, helping support. We were able to pick up more and more support. But here's the bottom line. There were people that were trying to do whatever they possibly could to get this bill not to make it to the final executive committee, because then it would have been forced to go onto the House floor. And people were going to have to either vote for relief for people during the pandemic or not vote for it. No one wanted to see, I think, what that record would look like. So it was blocked in getting to the last executive committee meeting. Some of my colleagues mourned and cried with me. Others, I think, were relieved. There were members who were going to be voting for it because they cared about the issue, because of the relationship with me. But there were lobbyists who had already threatened, you vote on that, you got a November election, you remember that. This is real.
So who these punk representatives that listen to some lobby? I want names. You can put them in the chat window.
That's what I'm trying to. I thought Democrats were the good people.
Most people do, right? They don't know.
Not all the Democrats are good people, and once in a while there's a good Republican, maybe. Not men, but maybe. It was a number of people. Look, it takes 60 votes. We have 73. I think 69 showed up because some were compromised and couldn't go to Springfield. It was rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. I cried my ass to sleep the night on Friday night, when I saw just how things were played, I got played over and over. I think we got played over and over. In less than 3 days, 3,000 witness slips were filed. These weren't lobbyists that were sending these generic letters into the bill. Witness. These were everyday people who can tell you this is exactly why we need this bill to pass. I am on the verge of homelessness. I can't pay my rent. Landlords saying the same thing from all over. So it didn't move, but Ricardo, I will tell you something. This was the moment where we forced a conversation about housing in ways that I am told have never been forced on that House floor. There is no doubt for them that I'm coming back, and we're building a group of colleagues of mine who care about the issue and they're new electeds, or care about the issue because you have made them care about the issue, because you've been calling them nonstop. And veto session is just a couple months away, and we're coming back, possibly with the same bill. When we show just the loss and the unfortunate evictions that will happen because we did not pass this bill.
You know, and I'm thinking about this because, you know, Charles brought up this notion of like Democrats, and we live in a political binary system, right? That very easily scaffolds, right? Like Republicans, you know, Republicans, bad guys, Democrats, good guys. When we know that Democrats have kind of like perpetrated so many violences against working class communities, right? Whether it's someone like, you know, Obama that signed Blue Lives Matter legislation, you know, the first Blue Lives Matter legislation at a time of, you know, of highly publicized police killings, or, you know, concentrated wealth, income inequality, or help dismantle public education. You know, and also we see that locally. Right, we see that locally with the mayor that ran on a progressive platform that has betrayed every one of the promises of her campaign, whether it was on the front of education, restoring an environmental department, you know, or being accountability. Delia's like, she ain't my boss. I'll throw that. I'll call her out.
Well, and I have on the House floor. She and I have talked a lot about a lot of things. Yeah, so we won't go into that story, or our little argument on the floor. But here's the thing, Ricardo, and I think, Charles, to your point, Chicago is ran by Democrats, and we're not doing too well. So we got to be really honest about ourselves, and we got to be honest about who we are responsible and accountable to. There are some good people in Springfield. There are people that I didn't think that would be working with me that are working with me, and there are people there that are there collecting a check, and they're at the service of certain people, and those people are not us.
Names, Delia. Give me the name. I will e-blast this. We have a following on this show. We will get it out there. You know, we'll do it after the show. You know, you don't gotta say it right now. But
we'll go to their fundraisers, Delia. We'll go to their fundraisers. That's Danny Solis.
Right. I mean, speaking of Danny Solis,
like, oh yeah, I've done it.
Right. But you know, that's a good point, Moy, right? Because I think about this. We think about Danny Solis. That's someone that, you know, definitely came up with like a cohort of Latino activists, you know, former activists that kind of had a lot of progressive values and talk in their historical moment. And then we saw Danny Solis on the issue of housing, you know, sell out our community.
And he's a Bobby Rush of y'all community.
Yes, he's the Bobby Rush of our community, man. Except he be getting happy endings. That's the difference. And wearing wiretaps. But I'm saying that because, you know, Moise is like, you're not, you know, you've seen this kind of corruption, right? Like, and so what are some of the ways we've seen politicians, you know, that you've seen politicians participate in making our communities unlivable while you were working at Pilsen Alliance? And how do you think politicians even get away with it? Right? Like, that's the thing that I keep on wondering, like how, like part of it, we know, like when Delia starts talking about, you know, even the processes, we know we're so alienated from those processes, right? Like I know I have a doctorate degree and I still don't know what the hell happens in Springfield, like, you know, like, so like, you know,
they don't teach you, you know that, right? You go to Springfield, no one's going to teach you how to do this. It's intentional. If I don't know the process to move my bills, I am dependent on someone else. Guess what? Only the bills that they want to move will move. It's all very intentional. Let me
run for office if I wasn't a radical queer of color that doesn't believe in institutional change. But Moy, so what is some of the stuff that, you know, you've seen in Pilsen and you know, that you can speak on? Because I know you all have done a lot of work confronting this type of like faulty representation. Yeah,
it really, and again, it comes back to the people like that are leading the fight, you know, against corruption, and it really comes down to shared values, integrity, right? Not selling out, not falling into divide and conquer. That's how Danny Solis survived for 22 20 whatever years in office, because he was effective in dividing people, right, and using his power to intimidate, right, and it just pretty much came down to like people who were willing to raise hell, right, and start shit and scare the hell out of these people, right, and hit them, right, and base build and organize and help build movements with other radical organizations, right? It wasn't just Pilsen Alliance. So again, it's all about collective, right? And I think building that momentum, I think it reached to a boiling point with this last automatic election, because like when the whole thing with Solis, the exposed as a corrupt, FBI mole, we're like, holy shit, right? So, hey, we felt vindicated. We're like, hey, we told you so. We told you he was, a piece of shit. We told you he was taking money from developers. We told you that he was selling out the community, and we took the heat, right? And that, again, it's not an easy job to do, right? And again, it comes down to integrity. It comes down to values, commitment, sacrifice, right? And that's why I think, again, PA is just it's a hardcore crew, and we're not afraid to confront that corruption, even in the present time.
So, Joanna, it's time to talk about Black people and Black politicians. And we have like Black folks in every high seat in Chicago. And I know you have to go to blows with Black politicians all the time. Like even with Rahm Emanuel's administration, which I call an anti-Black administration, but it was like rubber stamped by like Black aldermen. And so I just want to know your thinking, especially like since we have a Black mayor who ran as a progressive, but doesn't seem all that progressive. I would say regressive in a lot of ways. How do you explain this phenomenon? Like how do you, I want to know, like, how do you think we should interact with these Black political elite, or how should we be engaging our reps in this particular moment of hardship and oppression under COVID-19?
That was a lot.
I'm sorry.
So number one, they're all anti-Black administrations, all of them.
Yes.
You gotta start there, right?
Joanna, how we get you to run?
Never.
I need you.
You need me where I am.
For you, man.
Okay, so getting back to Charles' question, the second thing is Lightfoot only parroted Joanna Kolansky's talking points. Right, Joanna Kolansky comes from a family of progressives, right? She's able to create her own hustle, creating strategies to get people who aren't progressives to look like progressives, and that's what she did with Lori Lightfoot, right? I ain't throwing salt on Joanna.
So she's behind those commercials.
Can you let us know who Joanna Kolansky is for our audience that might not?
So Joanna Kolansky again was sort of the wizard behind the curtain. Who made Lori Lightfoot sort of shed her skin of being a police board president, right? Who made sure that cops, when they killed Black people, stayed cops and weren't prosecuted, weren't held accountable. She did that when she worked in the Daley administration in the emergency management office, and making sure that when Black people, right, were mistreated, made sure that when Black people had intentional crimes done against them, that it got swept under the rug. Like, this is who this person is, right? And so now that she's able to talk the talk of progressive people are like, oh, wow, she's a reformer. She's one of us. Because, we busy trying to figure out how we're going to pay rent. So We're not looking at who's in some obscure office in the Daley administration, right? We're not paying attention to who made the decision to make sure that Dante Servin was able to retire and get a pension, right? We're not paying attention to that stuff, right? And so she's able to come out like, you know what, Rahm Emanuel is wrong. What he did, allowing the Laquan McDonald tape to disappear until after the election, was wrong. He needs to be held accountable. I'm gonna run for mayor. I'm your girl. I'm gonna make it happen. And everybody like, man, that sounds good. Right? And so what she's able to do is the exact same thing all elected officials are able to do, right? Not just the Black ones. And that's a whole nother thing. Like that's the show by itself, Ricardo. Right? I was not able to get a meeting with the Black Caucus to talk about Black people not being displaced when the Obama Center goes in Jackson Park.
More like
They
the
refused to meet with me.
I said more like the Joanna. They more like the
Ricardo.
WAC. I said more like the WAC caucus when you're talking, giving that information. I think now that I'm in my my mid upper 30s, I feel like I just want to be making parental jokes all the time now.
Wait, can I just say mid upper 30s? I'm gonna start saying that.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
But Joanna, how do we engage with these reps?
So here's their vulnerability, right? The fact that they get elected by selling wolf tickets and they never do the work to build a base. Like right now, you got the alderman in the 7th Ward, Greg Mitchell, who the people hate. They hate him. I live in South Shore. I've knocked almost every door in that ward, including the precinct where he got his most votes. I talked to a person who actually thought he was doing a good job. One, the issue is, who can afford getting elected? Who can afford that, right? And so the alternative we have is to make sure we understand what these people are doing. We organize a forum on rent control, again, in the precinct where he got the most votes. At the school, we organized to get people to the meeting. Greg Mitchell, I want y'all to hear this. Greg Mitchell, as a favor to Curtis Tarver, got the principal to pull our reservation.
What the fuck?
2 weeks before the event happened, we had to scramble to find someplace else to hold the event. And so they'll work for each other, but they won't work for us.
Right.
Curtis Tarver said when he was running, he supported rent control. He stood in a forum, candidate forum, reorganized and said he supported rent control. And then, according to him, it wasn't him, it was somebody else using his Twitter account, tweeted out twice that he was going to advocate for rent control when he got to Springfield. When he got to Springfield, he refused to meet with us. He said he wanted to wait until the hearing because he was not going to be swayed by special interest groups. We're a special interest group. He gets down there, votes against it, and then kills it so it doesn't get out of committee and get to the floor. Now, again, in the 7th Ward, where democracy is supposed to take place, him and his cronies made sure democracy doesn't happen. Like, again, why can't we even have the conversation? Why are you blocking the conversation from happening?
Right.
When we talked about the CBA in city council, they wouldn't let us in the meeting. Alderman Taliaferro had to walk us into the room to say, hey, can we talk about this? We walk in, they shut down the meeting. We're walking out. Leslie Harrison, who lied and said she always supported the CBA when she was very publicly on the record opposing the CBA,
right,
is nose to nose with Taliaferro, trying to cuss him out, talking about why did he bring us into the meeting? The meeting they were talking about a CBA. Why wouldn't you have us in the meeting?
Right.
And so I apologize for going off. I know this is a very respectable show.
You know, we very much it's very respectable. You know what I mean? That's why I make sure this robe is satin and that I am, you know what I mean, not showing too much skin.
Hey.
But I think one of the go ahead, Jack.
Is it impossible to talk about rent control without talking about the state legislature? And can you kind of break down for us what is lift the ban and why is it necessary for it to pass, for the legislature to pass some rent control for the state?
Yeah. So number one, I don't think there's a single person on the planet who's not struggling to pay rent right now. Right? We know anecdotally, we know statistically, people are struggling to pay rent. They just have been. And so part of what has caused this problem is corporate landlords, private equity firms buying up entire markets, investors from states around the country, and it's important to note, investors from other countries coming into our communities, purchasing multifamily developments, and then sitting back, letting the checks roll in every single month because people got to have some place to live. So after the foreclosure crisis, the same people who crashed the global economy figured out, you know what? All these people whose homes we just stole, they went into apartments. We can get that money too. And so that's what they did. So Mac Properties, Antheus Capital, based out of New Jersey, came in after they just destabilized the market around Washington University in St. Louis. They came to Chicago and destabilized the Hyde Park, Kenwood housing market. Like, things have not been the same since. A senior in our community, she's lived in her home for 50 years, raised her family. She moved there from the Robert Taylor homes back in the day. She expected to live out her golden years there. This venture capital firm out of New Jersey bought her building, no upgrades, didn't get a fresh coat of paint, didn't get a new carpet, didn't get nothing. Her rent kept going up more and more and more until her entire monthly income was just going on her rent.
God damn.
Her whole check, after she paid rent on the first, she's living on food stamps and her children. So at 75, how you going apartment hunting? And why should she be forced to live in a senior home if she doesn't want to?
Right.
Right.
And so that's why, right? You look at every community, not just in Chicago, but across the state. There are counties in Illinois where 1 out of 3 renter is paying more than half their income just on rent. 1 out of 3. How is that sustainable? You go to work, when you come home on the first, half your check is gone, right? That first check you get, gone. And then you got to wait until the next check to make sure you got groceries, to make sure your baby got a toy to play with, to make sure you got clothes on your back. Don't even talk about childcare, right? And so the reality is, if we do not begin to regulate rent, there is no way we're going to be able to house people. And I know Delia wants to jump in, but one last thing. When you look nationally, right, the amount of money that Congress has appropriated to HUD for vouchers, just vouchers alone, has multiplied by 5 in the last 15 years. The amount of people who are housed, who receive those vouchers, has gone up a little bit more than 1.5 times. So we've increased how much money goes towards the voucher program 5 times, and we're barely housing people. It's money going down the drain because there is no regulation on rent. Rent keeps going up. We keep paying these investors taxpayer dollars to create homelessness. That's what we're doing with our taxpayer dollars because we don't hold these people accountable. And the system is set up so that we can't. And that's why we got to stop playing by their rules. Is the rules are stacked against us. It's like playing Monopoly and you the banker and you keep stealing money. And I wonder why I never win, right?
My cousin used to do that shit. Just be like every time she passed go, just sneak $400 and like put it under the board and shit. I hated that.
Yo, my cousins used to like not give a shit about their toys, right? Like I was like hyper, like keeping them clean. Like their Barbies would be naked like in a week and like shit like that. And we play Monopoly, like the stuff would be missing and they'd be using random shit to be the houses. Like all of a sudden Park Place would have like 4 beans on it. And that was supposed to be like a hotel. I was like, what the hell is going on? Although like now, like, you know, I realized it was like subverting, right, the capitalism of it by, you know, brown capitalism, maybe, I don't know, which isn't going to save us either. But Dada, you were going to jump in, I think, am I right?
Well, I was going to just say to Joanna's point, I'm oftentimes told, right, when I talk about housing, and very quickly as I got to Springfield last year, well, you know, a lot of these conversations are Chicago issues. They're not really happening across the state. And that's bullshit. I get calls from all over the country this whole bill not passing, and I'd say it didn't pass, but when I tell you raises awareness, I even ended up on Fox 32 talking about this bill. And I had and you know how, and Joanna said, no one is able to pay rent. And then I was thinking, was that Anchor, that really Ivy League anchor said to me, well, representative, my friends are calling me that they can't pay the rent. So they're moving in with their parents. I'm like, the parents got trust funds. I don't know about that. But what I say is that it is not just a Chicago issue, but that is what they will tell you. The second thing is that nothing moves in Springfield in the House. And most of the time things have to get out of the House, then get to the Senate, and then they move, right? Without 60 votes. I got to convince 60 people to be, or 59, right? If I'm the 60th. And then I remember to press my button because I forgot my first bill. I forgot to press the button. They told me, Representative, you're going to vote on your homeless bill or not? But I got too excited. But nothing moves without 60 votes. And the second conversation to Joanna's point is, this is not just a Chicago issue. And our people can't afford to live in Chicago. Black and brown people are leaving Chicago because we can't afford to stay here. When you're in Humboldt Park, you on my block, when I look to the front, I look to the left and to the right, and all I see is new white families moving in who paid $489,000 to $700,000 for houses that foreclosed for $80,000 a couple years ago. I mean, our folks are leaving, and they're not even leaving. They certainly can't go to Logan Square. They can't go east. And even if they're going west. I mean, how far west do they go? So one of the things that I think to Joanna, as Joanna is talking about, we got to really educate our folks, and we got to make sure that the constituents are reminding them, I can't pay rent either in West Chicago. I can't pay rent either in Joliet. I certainly can't pay for it in Evanston, definitely not Evanston. And then I got people talking about Naperville, which, you know, there's a lot of jokes I can make about Naperville. And
Let's make them.
Let's make them.
Right? No, because we got a good rep there that supports all my bills, and she was with me. So thank you, Ann Staba Murray, for standing and supporting and co-sponsoring all my bills. But I think that's a thing that I want to make sure that we're very, very clear about. And then, you know, as I was reflecting on what happened to my bill, people said, Delia, the fact you got 49 people convinced that they would vote for it, damn, that's pretty good. I appreciate that, but that doesn't pay the bills. And that doesn't help with mortgage relief. And it certainly doesn't help the people that currently right now need it because the bill didn't pass. But the second thing I would say to you is that I find it unexcusable that in the city of Chicago, with so-called Democrats being the majority, and every single person running, even the two Republicans, well, they may have not called themselves progressive when they ran last year, but Spazzato and what is it? Spazzato and Cop and the other one. I don't even keep their names because I try to block them. But there's no excuse why we can't move housing ordinances in Chicago.
Right.
Like, if you call yourself a progressive, you are experiencing gentrification. You are in neighborhoods that have been divested for so long. Why can't you move shit? There's no political will, and we gotta keep them accountable. And we have to listen to me. We gotta get big money out of politics. I had to quit my job to run for office. I was told, if you are serious about running against these four other women who have money and partners who are paying for it and doing all that, and all these developers, you got to quit. I had to quit my job. I went 3 months. Like, I saved enough just to pay the mortgage for January, February, March, and my sister helped me pay April. No, you know, no one talks about the fact that if I won or lost, I don't start till January. I didn't work for a whole year. Nearly went bankrupt. And listen, I'm not trying to feel sorry. I won. I'm almost.
She's like, it worked.
And listen, I didn't work for the year. I didn't go bankrupt. I'm still paying the credit card debt and those damn interest rates. But I am doing what I love. I took a very good cut on what I was making. But this is what I love to do. And when you're a full-time legislator, this is all you are focusing on, which, by the way, if you're not a full-time legislator, what are you doing? Because I work 70 hours a week. If you got 2 other jobs and you're also a legislator, how the hell do you do anything?
That's Ed Burke. He's been making millions doing millions doing too much.
And I'll tell you that when I was working the bill, like a week and a half ago, I found out how many of my colleagues are realtors. I had no idea.
No.
So, well, you do know I'm a realtor, right? I'm like,
Damn.
You gotta know, that's the hustle. Like, real estate is like the drug game, you know?
It is crazy.
It's like
it is crazy. So anyway, I'm gonna stop going.
I feel like I have to advocate for you to come on the show, right? Because Ricardo asked me if you were a Chuyista, And I'm like, well, you know, Chuy endorsed her, I said, but she's been doing the work forever, right? So,
thank you, Jackie, for standing up for me.
I wanted to ask, like, how do you identify as a progressive, as an independent, and also how do we pressure our existing officials who identify as progressive to really align with the housing movement and to do something about it?
Yeah.
I think progressive has been overly used and abused. I don't even, like, everyone's a progressive shit. Arroyo was a progressive last I heard. Like about Moncragen, right? Everyone's a progressive. So I don't even know what I say except that I'm rooted and I'm ready. Except that I come from my neighborhood and I'm unapologetic about it, and I do the damn work. And I do the damn work because I can't afford not to do it. And so, because, you know, I think, Jackie, you heard about the chancla, but also I got a lot of people who stay on me till 1, 2, 3 in the morning and tell me, I saw what you said and I need you to do this and that. So I don't know what that word would be. I would say to you, yes, maybe some part of independent. And I also understand that nothing happens with me. I'm not a savior. I don't intend to be. I'm not going to be one. It takes 60 votes and it takes a lot of pressure from the community to get anything done. But the second piece I would say to you is that I do find some hope in some of the people that have recently gotten elected. I will also say to you that the entire Black caucus of the House was supporting and sponsoring my bill. I gotta give that. And so Joanna and Moy and whoever was making those calls nonstop, everyone, Petty was supporting the Joanna, and don't fall off your chair. He was supporting the bill, but not the entire Latino caucus. And there's some pain around non-Latino people who were not supportive of the bill that are in Latino majority districts. And it's really painful. And I'm not gonna go into it right now, but I got to really see who's about it and who's not. And I had women in the suburbs who are up for an election in November who said, I am told I shouldn't support your bill. The realtors are coming at me hard. I know what you're fighting for. I believe in this work. And I am still a yes vote and call me as a sponsor, even if I don't make it in November. And I said, I need you to make it in November because I need you to vote on rent control and everything else later. But I would say to you that I think that one of the things is that you gotta call people out on what they say they care about and what those values are, and then ask and demand of them to live into it. And we gotta get big money out of politics. I can't say it enough. We gotta get big money out of politics.
I mean, I'm thinking about this because, right, I think about Joanna and Moy, the work that your organizations do in terms of, you know, and the strategies and stuff that you kind of deploy in holding representatives at the city and state level accountable, right? Like Moy, I know Pilsen Alliance is known to get buck here and there, right? And then, you know, Joanna, you know, y'all at Coco, y'all as well. I mean, sometimes you guys even get pushback for trying to hold politicians accountable from, you know, the community that you're trying to defend. It's like being an X-Men, being an activist. It's like you're trying to save a world that sometimes hates you. And, you know, I'm thinking about that. Even I was just thinking about this so much this past week, right? You know, we've seen so much activism in Chicago do so much work. I'm thinking about No Cop Academy and the women of color that were kind of behind that organizing that changed the whole discourse, you know, and right before that, you know, they got Anita Alvarez out of office, right? Like, you know, it was the same people behind that, you know, those campaigns. But I'm also thinking about, like, you know, the work that your organizations do, and even just what's been so depressing during this pandemic is the fact that we thought aldermen, you know, this was supposed to be the moment, and all these aldermen talked the game about we got to be here for people. And just this weekend, you know, one of our Hoodoisie family members, Damon Williams, was arrested, as well as Jennifer Madigan. They were also behind the Freedom Square, you know, along with Christiana Colon, who's Damon's sister, and also you know, activist that we love and is part of our crew. And only 3 aldermen showed up: Jeanette Taylor, you know, Byron Sicho Lopez, and Rosana Rodriguez, and it was depressing. Right here we are against the backdrop of racialized police violence. Here, young Black people are getting arrested, right? Already in a city that disproportionately incarcerates Black people, right? Cook County, over 90% of the 7,000 people that are, you know, locked up pre-trial, not even convicted of a crime, are Black. And so I'm just wondering, you know, what are the things, if you were to be like, here are the strategies that I've seen work best to get these people accountable, and here's what you all need to be doing in this pandemic moment right now.
You need to be holding them accountable, right? So you spoke to it, right? You spoke to what the issue is, and this goes back to Charles' question, right? These people sell whoop tickets, get elected, and don't do the work. They don't do the work, right? And so what happens? Come election time, they got to go to whoever the boss is to get boots on the ground, to get money to buy their way back into the election, right? So whether that boss is Tony Preckwinkle, who's not a progressive, whether that boss is, I guess, now Lori Lightfoot, even though she's having trouble building her coalition, right? She created a PAC to be able, with the intention to be able to punish people.
Right.
And punish who? The 10 who stand up against her the most, right? Or if you're talking about Mike Madigan or whoever. And so we got to hold these people accountable. We got to remind them that they are elected to serve us. So that means showing up at their office, showing up at their home, showing up at whatever business they own or partially own, showing up wherever it is they come in and cut a ribbon, showing up where they are to make life for them uncomfortable. Because the reality is, as civilized as we want to be, as much as we want to hold on to, well, you don't, but as much as people want to hold on to respectability politics, right? And you gotta have the right diction and all of this.
Right.
They're not caring about that when they voting against a bill that's going to help their constituents, right? They're not caring about that when they know people are languishing in a jail after the police done beat them. They don't care. And so why is it we have to act like we treat these people with kid gloves when they don't care anything about us? You had Emma Mitz stand up in a room full of people and call herself a gangster. Like that's cool.
Yeah.
I remember
and they
that.
kicking out black young people.
Right.
Right? You got these same people who were standing up cheering, supporting Rahm Emanuel, who was a murderer.
Right.
He was a murderer. His policies ensured black death in this city of Chicago. His policies, closing 50 schools. What do you think that's going to do? All these city planners with degrees. You don't think they understand what happens from every decision that's made? This is just an accident? Oh, my bad, black people. I ain't know y'all was going to die.
Real shit.
And so we cannot treat them like they're real people. We have to treat them like the animals that they are. And I realize I'm going a little far. Maybe I had a little bit too much caffeine today. But this week has been hellacious. I mean, have y'all been, like, to the viewers, have y'all been paying attention to what's happening? Like, for real. Like, in the street. Like, have you been paying attention? And where are our elected officials at? Where are they? They're sheltering in place while people getting kicked out their homes. 80 evictions filed since the stay-at-home order? Since the moratorium on evictions, 80 evictions filed? And nobody is saying anything about it, right? Except us. Nobody elected me, right? I don't have a $100,000 salary coming from the city. I don't have people ringing my phone every time something happens.
It's not about you, Joanna.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Ricky. It's all about me.
Can you get in there more? Can you comment on the successful actions of campaigns that you steered, or like that can actually bring about some possibility in this moment? Because the ones are speaking to like some real ass like harm, and folks are out here looking for answers from politicians, but like give the people some possibilities.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Charles. Definitely. I think we have a definitely unique perspective because, as y'all know, our former director is now an alderman of 25th Ward, who pretty much ran on a platform of issues, right, of struggle that we were fighting together, right? So first off, realizing that we were, not us as an organization, but people, right? Because we are a nonprofit and we're not going to screw that around. We put the fight out there, right? And we helped get, Byron elected. I think, which was a great victory for the community. I definitely think that the realization is that it wasn't the end, right? Oh my God, we just, we did all this amazing work, and now, we have Byron as the alderman. That's amazing. But then we realized, holy shit, there's so much more work to do, right? And it just feel like I feel like the machine kind of like rebranded itself, right? It adapted to this last election, and in some cases, I feel like the machine got stronger, right? With Lori Lightfoot and her whatever the hell she's trying to like consolidate power. I'm like, oh crap, now we got to take on the mayor again. Now we got to take on big developers and big institutions. So like people again, having elected officials, democratic socialists, I think it's great, and we need to support them and nurture that, because they can't be fighting alone, right? They need support from community, right? Because again, they're elected to represent community. So if there's not that compatibility of having a grassroots community support to these elected officials who are accountable to the community, then we're gonna get stuck with elected officials that can't get shit done, right? And I think we work too hard. People have sacrificed too much to let this political movement, deflate itself, right? Whether it's politics and ego and none of that, like all those divisive tactics that have worked in the past. I think we need to learn from our history, our political history, right? And say, you know what? People talk about when Harold Washington got elected, right? And it's like, oh, it brought all this, progressive change. And then I know I listen to my elders too, and they say, yeah, back in the day, guess what happened? People didn't get involved after those progressives got elected. People just flat out, right? And that's how, boom, machine got rebranded, right? And that's how we got Mayor Daley too, right? And so forth and so on. So I definitely think the work needs to be, has to continue. The political work needs to continue in our communities. Because we have some elected officials that are doing great work and are actually walking the walk, but so there needs to be support, right, and nurturement to this political movement. So that's how we hold our elected officials accountable, and that's how I think we can build more political power on the citywide level and at the state level too, right? Because we're down for the struggle for lifting the ban on rent control. So I really think it comes down to grassroots support for these elected officials, and by no means they're not they're not saviors. I think like Delia said, I'm not going to be a savior. And so it's like, yeah, they're not, we got to hold them accountable too. But let's support the work that they're doing, right? Because they're fighting for the issues. They're fighting for affordable housing, and they're doing everything they can, right? And we realize it's a small little clique. So it's only going to get bigger if we raise the political electorate and reach out to other communities that haven't had the opportunity to organize, right? And not to take away from any other communities, but I'm just saying, like, this has to grow. It can't be just and because the machine is gonna, like, again, it's a living organism, man. I study politics, I live politics, I see it, right? And I definitely think we need to outsmart, and we need to know who our enemies are, and need to know who we are, right? And so I know it's a long answer, but really it comes down to us, right? The people on the ground.
It's a great answer, because even when we think about the idea of refining power, you're right. Like and we see this all the time, right? Like absorption, right? So even when the state kind of and the United States kind of sanctioned civil rights movement, conceded to demands of like Black power, what we saw them, that's precisely when we saw the prison industrial complex kind of balloon, right? That they actually said yes and then refined their methods of oppression. And I think when we saw this kind of progressive movement explode, right? AOC, Bernie Sanders, is precisely when we saw, is when we were, and it's also tied in with social media, because we saw people, being able to use social media as a form of discourse. And all of a sudden actions were deterritorialized from conversations, because you could just debate, right? You could just proclaim, and people are going to share that meme or share that clip. And so I think that's one of the things that we really saw with Lightfoot, right? Like we've seen now all these, like y'all said, everyone running to claim themselves as a progressive, and then all of a sudden, flake. Right? They said, we used to call them pancake motherfuckers because they flip flop. That's like a old hood term. But one of the things I'm thinking about is, what it points to is that how those in power can always take moments of crisis and expand them. You know what I mean? And capitalize off of them. And I'm thinking about this moment of crisis right now, the pandemic. And I'm thinking about, what we're here to talk about, which is kind of like housing. And so I guess one of my questions is, right. And, and I want to be careful, because I think one of the things, like, we're a radical show. People sometimes are like, wait, is this conspiracy theory? Hey, y'all, like, I got a goddamn doctorate degree, just about, right? Got finished the dissertation. And like, there's, you could read Naomi Klein, Disaster Capitalism, that talks precisely about, right, like shock doctrine, how people in power, business and corporations and government use crisis to capitalize.
Ricky, they were building shit while this pandemic was happening, like right. All throughout Bronzeville. Like, they were building new development while this shit was happening, while people were in homes and while essential workers at work. So
I mean, the most depressing thing is, like, we're staying in downtown right now, and like one of the things that we saw was, people, right? We can't, there's certain resources we can't get, but immediately, like within like 18 hours of the protest down here, you saw people kind of Mexican workers replacing the windows of businesses here. And so I'm just saying, like,
Yep.
what are the things that Delia, Joanna, Moy, I think one of, as we near the end, what are one of the things that you think we need to be looking out for, or how you are worried or anticipating people are going to try and capitalize off the pandemic around housing?
Well,
I'm capitalizing off of it by just wearing robes all the time and existing in no pants and socks.
I was working on the bill a couple weeks ago, and I got a new puppy because that's kind of the thing you do when you're quarantining after the election. I was super depressed, and then after Bernie and all, I ended up getting a puppy that you've probably been hearing barking this whole time.
Right.
I've been wearing like nice tops, right, for all these Zoom meetings, and like leggings, like Adidas leggings. And in one of those times, I guess the dog must have pooped on. I don't know what she did. Or my niece was watching. She started screaming like the dog was killing her. And I forgot to turn off the camera, and I ran. And like when I ran back, right, all sweaty after cleaning the poop, someone messaged me like, "Oh, I like your Adidas bright orange pants, and with the really nice blazer top you got going." I was like, "Damn it, I forgot that I have those pants on, right? Because you're not supposed to see the bottom."
Right.
But I wanted to say something real quick about the struggle and this bill. We got $396 million in housing relief in the state of Illinois. That is the most money that any state has now allocated for housing relief money. And I want to just say that we didn't win the bill, we didn't get the bill, but all of the people that started calling, organizing, agitating, calling their legislators, you are the reason why we were able to negotiate and get that much money into the bill, the state budget, to allocate for housing relief. And it's not nearly enough, but it is twice as much as we began the conversation. And I want to say that to you for two reasons. When I'm having these really frank conversations with you, you're not in the House floor with me. God knows I wish you were.
Mm-hmm.
Shit is uncomfortable sometimes.
I love that shit. I will make shit awkward and ratchet.
Yeah, but listen, Ricardo, I need 60 votes to move things, right? So I tell you this for a reason, that they know that I may not be like some of them. I'm going to come with passion. And I swear to you, if they probably told me, Republicans and Democrats, "Oh, we appreciate your passion on this issue." There was a point that I said to a Republican, Tim Butler, I'm going to be honest with you, and from Springfield, and I said, "Listen, passion doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't pay the rent, and it's not going to pay the mortgage. It's not going to keep my people, Black and brown people, from dying during COVID-19, because you're fine. We're not. So while I appreciate you liking my passion, what I'd like and appreciate more is you passing this bill, right?" But I say that to say that there are things that I can do, and the reason that I'm even able to move certain things may not be because people love me in Springfield, is because they know that I'm not alone. There are a bunch of people that are watching. There are a bunch of organized and community people that are making phone calls, and they're making phone calls not just to Chicago electeds, but Joanna's making a phone call to downstate, Central Illinois, and everywhere in between. And I want to say that very clear, because there is no way that AOC, there is no way that Bernie, there is no way that any of us in these spaces are able to force certain conversations and move certain bills if it wasn't because the people that are inside fear the people that are backing, supporting us. And many of them are certainly not elected. So I want to make sure that I give you kudos, because the only reason I'm able to even go to Springfield and do this is because of the people that are actually pushing and agitating and organizing on the outside. That's actually how the 60 votes will happen. It won't be because they love me or they like my lipstick color or anything like that.
Or your orange Adidas pants.
Right. Or my Adidas pants with my really.
If I wasn't boycotting Amazon, I would have ordered some, because now I can't stop thinking about it. And I know I'd look good as hell in those.
With the robe, though. With the robe.
Right. Oh, yeah.
You gotta wear the robe.
I got an eclectic aesthetic up in this bitch.
But the last thing I wanted to say is we got to talk about anti-Blackness, right? I am a Latina. I am Guatemalan. And I come from a community in a country that told people that I was pretty because I was light-skinned, right? And then my brother wasn't as cute because he's a little darker. Latinos and elected officials have to take responsibility. We are in this fucking moment right now because of our lack of action. We should have passed police accountability reforms 2-3 years ago, 4 years ago. When Laquan McDonald happened, we should have been passing accountability reforms, and not just a pledge for more freaking training. That's so easy for us to talk about. We actually need to have community oversight that comes from the people and deep comprehensive. At the state level, the same. So first of all, elected officials, let's take responsibility. We are in this particular moment because of us and our lack of action and prioritizing. Number two, as a Latina, as a proud Latina that loves my roots, I also understand that we have some real work to do. And we have racism in our veins and because of the ways that we've been colonized, and we have to call that shit out. And we have to stop this whole thing about black and brown, because until Black Lives Matter, nothing matters. And I want to make sure that I say that very loud and clear. And there are elected officials that are in this weird place of, oh, I don't know, but what about our people? And what about that? And why are they not showing up to our stuff? And why do we have to show up to theirs? Mm-hmm. But we need to shut up. We need to step back, and we need to be in solidarity. This is not a moment about people of color. This is about a moment about Black lives, and we have to be unapologetic about that. And I have no problem in saying that. And we have to do our own work. So I got to say that really loud and clear, because as you've seen all the stuff that's happening online, and I'm hearing elected officials, and some of my colleagues are now putting together some press conferences together. The movement and the liberation and Black and brown unity will not come from elected officials. It's going to come from you. And I am an ally that is going to partner with you, and I will show up when you want me to, and I will talk when you want me to, and I'll shut the hell up and sit in the back when you want me to. And I want to say that really loud and clear to all of my colleagues, that we do not leave this moment of unity, because in some ways we are part of the reason that we don't have that unity. And then I'm going to shut up there, but I think it's really important to say that our elders and the folks that have been there too long, we are the reason that we're fighting, and we need to step back and let you lead this moment and then support.
I think that's awesome, and thank you for that, and how timely. I do want to correct you though. Not all Latinx people have racism in their veins. I personally have soft serve ice cream in my veins, and it is delicious. It's also got sprinkles on it occasionally. So just want to put that on there.
For a while. Damn, that sounds good.
Joanna and Moy, what do y'all want to sound off on?
Go ahead, Joanna, you want to go?
So you have companies like Icarus that bought up in our community because property values are intentionally depressed, and they can make a bigger profit when they're able to buy low, right? Companies like Icarus bought these properties speculating that when the presidential center came to the south side of Chicago, property value would increase. They'll be able to cash in on their investment. Right now, in the midst of a global pandemic, when people aren't able to work through no fault of their own, but by governor order, and there's moratorium in place and federal protections for mortgages that are federally secured, they're kicking Black people out. Now, think about that for a second. And on top of that, they aren't asking for the rent to be paid. They just want the unit. Why is that? Right? Why would an investor purchase a property in a Black neighborhood, evict people when they are most vulnerable? They're expecting to be able to turn that unit around, jack the rent up, and get a higher value on it. You look at a company like Pangea. Now, they haven't filed any evictions, but their business model is eviction. They're able to raise the rent every time they kick somebody out. They don't need the back rent. They're going to make that up once they put that new tenant in the apartment. And so until we understand the predatory nature of these corporate landlords, we're not going to really understand the disaster capitalism that's taking place in this moment. Again, we've been told to stay in our homes. Landlords have been told not to evict people, but they're doing it, right? They're doing it because it allows them to make even more money on the back end. This isn't about short-term losses and short-term gains. This is about the long game for them, right? They think that if the long game is sort of flipped on its head, if they can keep flipping these properties as often as possible, they're going to make more money. And so they're going to hold on to it as long as they can, but they're going to push the tenants out as often as they can. And so that's the problem, right? That's the problem right there. And they are the ones who are driving the Chicagoland Apartments, the Chicago Association of Realtors, Chicagoland Apartment Association, neighborhood, what is it called? Building Owners Alliance, whatever they're called. These are the dogs that's lining our elected officials' pocket to make sure that we are not able to live in our homes. They're the ones who are making this happen.
Yeah. Ugh. And I mean, and so that's one of the things you're imagining, even that we can be looking out for, is like this kind of gentrification, essentially, and displacement in this moment.
Right. It's just like what happened during the foreclosure crisis, right? You're going to have small landlords who are going to look, who haven't been able to cover their mortgage payments, right? Who are going to look for cash for keys, again, like during the foreclosure crisis, right? You're going to have these corporate landlords, these investors who are able to swoop in, purchase these properties for pennies on the dollar because people are struggling. People are struggling.
And my favorite thing about speaking about struggling and surviving the pandemic is like all of a sudden you'll get a dog barking in the middle of this, or like Jawan's son was in the meeting yesterday too, and I'm like trying not to swear as much as I want. I love it. That dog was barking for liberation, and it is an ally. I want you to know, animal lives matter. Moy, close us out. What is what is one thing that you want people to be on the lookout for in this moment?
I definitely want to just say, be on the lookout for, people coming together. I definitely think, Pills Alliance has come a long way. There's a lot of great people that are coming back to the organization, back to the movement. So we definitely want to welcome people who are interested in throwing down and, being part of this organized resistance, right, to oppression, to systemic racism, to, and anti-Blackness too in our own community. So we got to have these difficult conversations amongst ourselves. We're gonna take that step. We're gonna do it, right? But at the same time, we want to definitely provide an organizing space for community to come together. And changing the culture of organizing, right? Because I've learned the hard way, and I think it's taken a lot of work for us to be where we're at right now. And I think we're definitely seeing some really, really great, beautiful work being done. And I definitely want to, despite all the chaos that we're living in and all this disorder happening, there's some really great work happening at the grassroots level. And we would definitely want to give people some hope, right? That we will make the change. But it starts with us, and we're gonna, and it's not gonna be comfortable, right? And I'm gonna have to acknowledge my own, internal racism, right? And all that shit, right? And it's not gonna be easy, but I definitely want to stay on the lookout, to be open and have Pills Alliance be that organizing space that we definitely need in the community, because these threats to the community are not gonna stop, right? And I think it really comes down to who's gonna take up the next, the next generation of fighting for justice. And I definitely I see that. I feel it, and it gives me optimism that in this crazy world that we live in, that there is hope. So I want to encourage people who are interested in getting involved, reach out to us and learn more about Pills Alliance, and learn about our mission and the work we do. Hang out with us if you can. I know everything's social distance, but I think once you get to know us, we pretty much say this is a safe space, right? And again, that's for another discussion, right? But what I'm saying is right now, I think this is a call to action to people, and again, the work starts with us, and we're gonna take that step. So that's all I got to say right now. I could definitely plug into all these different campaigns, but I'm trying to be thoughtful and optimistic and say, you know what? Yeah, we got this. We got to keep our heads up, and we got to hold each other in this difficult time, right? And support each other. So we're down for the fight, and we ain't going nowhere. Y'all know where we're at. We're on 18th Street. So come come by, man. Hit us up.
Right, we gotta keep our heads up, and we gotta do it style. Look at Jackie's little pink eyeshadow right over there. Charles red sport coat. Me and my gold lapel right over here. Thank you very much. Moy, Jawanza, Delia. I'm so glad you all joined us. Generally, we have like a hard out at 8:30, but this conversation I thought was so important. There was so much information just being dropped that I was like, yo, we're gonna let this run. So I want to invite you all to stick around. Jackie's gonna give us some updates, give our audience some updates, and I'm gonna close this out with the Rona reflection. You ready, Jax?
Yep.
Yep.
So I'm going to be giving some updates regarding the last few days, right? Chicago is in reconstruction mode right now after hundreds of businesses were broken into by looters who were many times not from the city, but there were certainly Chicagoans participating as well. Protests started on Thursday, and people were legitimately pissed off by the police state that killed George Floyd in Minneapolis. But the protests were peaceful as far as I could tell. However, as with many movements on the sidelines, there were provocateurs and people who went rogue and wanted to do their own thing. I do think that looting is an actual form of protesting, right? But it's devastating to the survival of a community, especially Black and Brown communities that in this moment are being systematically displaced from the city. Today, Chicago entered phase 3 of their plan to reopen the economy, as they say, which means that certain businesses can reopen if they follow certain safety guidelines. But since so many people have lost their jobs, their businesses, their sustenance, that's going to be hard, right? Right now, city and state officials are figuring out how to help neighborhoods come back to life. Residents are also doing what they can. They're organizing cleanups in their neighborhoods. They're starting to do some fundraising to aid small business owners. But like I said, it's going to be hard and it's going to be a long process. And I fear that some people will not be able to recover. The social discontent of the past week has also exposed a very ugly side of our communities, particularly anti-Blackness, which Delia talked about in the Mexican community, including Little Village, where I'm from, where there is a visible gang culture in the streets, which comes with machismo and territorialism, and apparently also racial profiling. Even though the intention was initially to prevent looters from entering, 26th Street, it became an excuse for people to act violent with anyone who was Black. After a couple of businesses were vandalized, the gang started shooting. There was reports of people's cars getting rammed into and set on fire simply because they had Black occupants. I even heard about stabbings, though I haven't been able to confirm that. It turned into a back and forth and extended into the town of Cicero, fueled by social media propaganda and, in my opinion, toxic masculinity and racism. Both Black and Brown people were shot and attacked. There were deaths as well along racial lines. So a battle against the white supremacist system ended up becoming a battle between Black and Brown people. And the cops were like, go for it, right? So for the past couple of days, there's been some damage control. There have been Black-Brown unity marches and actions in Pilsen and Cicero. And this morning, there was a solidarity march through Little Village organized by activists and grassroots groups, not the non-for-profit industrial complex. In the past few nights, there have been also violence interrupters and people de-escalating situations. But equally important, there have also been conversations happening across POC neighborhoods, on the streets, on the internet, and everywhere, and across gang lines as well. Gang leaders have actually picked up the phone and made some phone calls to the rank and file. So I think they also need to get some credit for that. The silver lining in all of this, in my opinion, is that this has forced us to have very necessary conversations. There is a mutual aid effort called Brown People for Black People Rapid Response, which is like a helpline for Black residents throughout the city to call if they feel unsafe walking in public or getting from place to place. There are more than 300 Brown volunteers in that network who could escort you, bring you groceries, and otherwise help you when you need to get through a Latino neighborhood. The number is 773-217-8533. And that's all I have for tonight.
Hey, thank you so much, Jackie. Thanks again. Um, it's one of the most heartening things I've seen. One of the most heartening things I've seen this week has been the protest that I just came from. I was doing a short teaching on anti-Blackness in Pilsen, and it was just populated with at least a few hundred Black and brown people there to precisely confront this issue. And it almost made me cry just being there and seeing this like sea of bodies. And it's one of the things that I want to talk about in the Rona reflection for this evening. So I'm just going to get to it. Here we are. So many of us call Chicago home. But if the cliche is home is where the heart is, why call this city that shows us no love home? Here it seems working class Black and brown people and our homes are under attack. The police murder of George Floyd is another reminder that Black people are not at home in the US. Lightfoot and Chicago police's reaction to protesters' rage of police violence was another reminder Black people and many of us are not home in Chicago. Lightfoot cut off access to downtown to protect corporations and sites of power like City Hall. She shut down the CTA to insulate the whiter and wealthier North Side and turned Black rage onto their own communities. Right now, when over 40 million people are unemployed across the country, struggling to hold onto their homes and survive, and Lightfoot refuses to offer substantial relief, it is no surprise people looted. What surprised me were the Black and brown racial tensions that exploded and the violence among these people that transpired in Chicago over the last 72 hours. Latinx people sent screenshots to my DMs of a video of a Black woman encouraging fellow Black people to loot a Mexican neighborhood instead. One woman said, if y'all see the corn man on the streets, beat his ass. But this virtual call for violence was far less upsetting than the actual anti-Black violence that was encouraged and romanticized by brown or Latino people in predominantly Mexican communities across the South Side and championed on social media. I was disappointed that at a time of social unrest, because of the incessant murder of Black people by police, our brown people were more vocal about how they needed to protect their communities from looters coming into their neighborhoods. I understand a real desire to not want a business secured through hard work to be destroyed. But the dynamics and discussion around this perceived threat of looters and the quickness and buy-in for mobilization, I believe, was thoroughly anti-Black. There are levels to it. There was the fact that this discussion detracted from the overarching issue of police violence. There was the way everyone was so quick to line the streets to defend against looters, who they likely imagine as Black, but have never been so quick to unify and defend our hoods against gentrification, ICE, or CPD. There was the discussion of looters as just opportunistic, senseless savages that recalled stereotypes of Black people as inherently violent, criminal, lazy scammers, animalistic subhumans. I want to urge brown people to do better and to be better. The same rioting they shame and judge is no different than what we did many times in US history, like the Zoot Suit riots. They don't call it the Zoot Suit respectable protests. Brown people defending their communities forget their community is on the stolen land of others. Brown people championing themselves for taking up arms against a racialized population they view as a criminal infestation is doing exactly what Trump has done to us. In debates about this, brown people say this isn't about race. It was just about protecting small business. To that I say, how many times as a Black person felt the weight of suspicious racist stares in a brown-owned small business? Or what have brown-owned small businesses done to stand up for Black lives before this? I don't mean to spur division or just easily condemn brown people. I'm saying this to push us to get to the realizations we need for real unity. The greatest glimpses of radical freedom this city has seen relied on Black and brown solidarity, like the Young Lords and Black Panthers unifying to form the first Rainbow Coalition, or Black and brown students walking out of high schools like Harrison High School to protest imperialism and the Vietnam War, or the Black and brown and multiracial solidarity building that helped get Harold Washington elected. A tenet of anti-Blackness is the belief that if Black people get free, we all get free. I want to offer an addendum to that after this week in Chicago. When Black people can be at home, we can all be at home. We have a common enemy keeping us from making Chicago home right now that is not each other. It is Lightfoot, it is big business, it is police, it is white supremacy, it is an unbridled capitalism. Let's work together to keep our aim there. I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight. We went a little bit longer, but our guest and the conversation deserved it, and it was needed. Thank you, Moy. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you, Delia. Of course, thank you, Charles, Jackie. Shout out to the Southside Weekly, who's doing such important work right now. Shout out to Injustice Watch, that's doing such important work right now. Shout out to that dog that is barking for liberation.
If anyone needs a dog to walk, let me know. I'm happy to rent her for free.
Yo, we'll do it. I want to invite everyone to tune in next week. We're going to be, it's the second part of our 2-part series on incarceration during COVID. We'll be looking at youth detention, both on Taylor and Ogden, as well as immigrant detention in spaces like youth immigrant detention in places like Heartland Alliance. Thank you all so much for tuning in, and thank you for our guests. Show them some love. We'll be posting ways to stay in contact with them and follow their work. I love you, Charles. I love you, Jackie. Let's all do a pose for a screenshot really quick on my computer. Go. Oh, there you go. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good night.